Welcome to the Ben and Tony podcast. Today we have Niran Vinod, the co-founder and creative director of Deft, a digital consultancy that helps brands scale through media, creative, and technology. Previously, Niran worked for 5 years at Instagram and Facebook, where he led fashion, luxury, and e-commerce. Now, Niran's life exemplifies modern digital media, advertising, and marketing. Since he was a teenager, Niran seemed destined to create and design. I still can't believe that he inadvertently created 2 huge online publications, Soccer Eye and Yin and Yang, by literally just following his passions. Niran's understanding of the digital world goes even deeper. He first met his wife through Twitter, and almost every single job opportunity can be traced back to his digital social media profile. Building out a public brand on the internet takes a lot of guts, and Niran has reaped the benefits of doing this. As a result, he has managed to balance his true passions with the financial pragmatism of a successful career. That's something we should all aspire to, especially for people in the audience who want to pursue a career in creative industries. I know that if I want to get ahead of the curve in culture, media, and technology, I'll follow Niran.
Hey guys, Ben here. Niran clearly just loves building, creating, making. He started really young, creating football wallpapers, and before he was even in university, he was serving over 500,000 people per month through that website. It's no wonder that he went on to lead creative for Instagram's fashion luxury space, and has most recently founded Deft, a consultancy that helps folks to launch and grow their digital businesses. I've just ordered his book, How to Build It, and I'm really looking forward to reading it.
Go ahead.
Man, go.
Okay. Welcome to Niran Vinod. He describes himself as a brown guy, a Londoner, a creative strategist, a gamer, a vigilante, but most of all, Niran says that he just likes to make stuff. He's a really interesting guy, and he's had a very interesting career. He used to be the creative lead at AKQA on Nike. He was a creative product strategist on Facebook. Most recently, he was actually the Instagram creative lead for fashion, luxury, and retail brands. And now he has left Facebook and has gone through quite a few transitions and has launched with a few other ex-Facebook people, Deft, which is a consultancy, and has also recently launched a book. So Niran, really excited to talk to you today, and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. And thanks for the intro.
Yeah, no,
it's funny. It's funny hearing those words being said by someone else.
Well, I mean, where should we even begin? I know you've had a lot of transition periods in your life, but maybe how did you even get into this industry in the first place? Like, was there a moment when you were younger that inspired you? What's the story about how you got into the whole sort of tech, media, marketing, advertising world?
Accidents, I guess. If I take it back 20 years, I had no idea this industry existed. I mean, tech didn't really exist 20 years ago, but advertising for me wasn't a thing. Like, my parents still don't have a clue how to explain what I do.
Yeah.
Now that I've left Facebook, they're like, what do we tell my friends that my son does? Because Facebook was such a well-known global brand. Can't say Deft.
Yeah.
I actually, growing up, typical Indian kid, maths, English, science, chemistry, you're going to be a doctor. That's the only career choice you have. Doctor, dentist, lawyer, engineer, anything that has that social secure job, that's what you're going to do. So academia was pushed on me. I fell in love. I mean, I think growing up in London, you're obsessed with football as it is. Yeah. So I loved football and I loved design. So I taught myself.
Who's your team?
It's a sensitive topic at the moment.
Hey, look, it's sensitive for me as well. But it's always sensitive for me.
From that screenshot I sent you, it's red and white.
Oh,
Arsenal.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
Yeah. It's a very sensitive time.
They've got a good heart, but anyway.
I've got a very toxic relationship there with Arsenal. I'm trying to disconnect. It's better for my heart.
Yeah.
But anyway, I fell in love with design through football forums. So I was on a football forum called soccerpulse.com, which was one of the biggest in the net. And I guess the main reason that I was on there was just to see transfer rumors and anything about Arsenal. And I discovered they had a design forum. I had taught myself how to design forum avatars and signatures and desktop wallpapers when they were a thing. We were all like 13. and nerds on the internet with 56K dial-up. And I started doing YouTube tutorials, entered a competition, which is all around designing a Pro Evo cover. I didn't win, but that got me really excited, and I was really excited about doing that after school instead of studying. I did really well for my GCSEs, and naturally my parents were like, you have to go to the grammar school that you got into. But I wanted to go to the sixth form to study design. I was like, nope, do this. And got really bad, shitty A levels. Then went to university, and they were like, you can do whatever you like. I was like, I'm going to do game design, because playing FIFA is great. Making games must be even better. Reality was, it wasn't. But the freedom of me leaving my parents' house meant I could party and be just let loose. I think within the first week, I came home with like Blazing Squad style eyebrow slits.
What was your parents' reaction to that?
I used my mum's mascara to like color it in, so my dad wouldn't notice my eyebrow slits. I got my ear pierced and my hair dyed. It was like completely different person in 7 days.
So you weren't looking like the lawyer they wanted.
No, I definitely wasn't looking like someone they take to a community function.
Wow.
And then I dropped out after a year, and I was still designing for this site, and we set up a site called soccereye.co.uk. Called it soccer because we couldn't get football up, and we were just mostly dudes, but at one point we had 500,000 hits a month. We had no idea what that meant. We were 16, 17, 18. Like, what does that even mean? We had no idea what content meant, strategy, just design wallpapers.
500,000 a month.
Yeah.
Good.
And we ended up getting bought out in my gap year in between that, dropping out from that uni. This American company called Ole Ole reached out to us and was like, we're going to buy you out. And they basically put me and my co-founder, who was in the US at the time, on a contract. And we were working for this company and getting paid a crap load. Now that I think about how much we were getting paid, it was way more than my first paycheck as a full-time employee after university.
How old were you? And
I was 18.
Point, and you dropped out of school at that point, or you?
I dropped out because I just didn't enjoy the course, and I was living at home in London, in my parents' place, trying to figure out what I want to do with my life, which is kind of, as an Indian parent, like that's ultimate failure. Your kid isn't in college, he's studying, and he's just sitting at home. So they couldn't tell anyone that I was doing that. And I spent the year just trying to figure out what I wanted to do, but I was just designing while I can, and watching anime.
Nice.
But in that year...
Yeah, that's so scrappy. So how did you kind of grow that without knowing anything about what you were doing? How did you get to 500K by accident?
We had no social media either. Like we had MySpace. That was the only platform. And there's High Five, but no one really used High Five.
I remember High Five.
MSN Messenger actually was a big way. A lot of us would join the forum, but then we'd connect on MSN Messenger and take our friendships further. But we'd actually advertise on other forums. So we'd go onto other bigger football forums. We're like, hey, we're from this. And we just designed these wallpapers that are the best. And we, at the bottom of the wallpaper, which would hide under the Microsoft start bar, you'd have your credits. So soccer.co.uk, designed by blah, blah, blah. And we started putting our logo into the work, faded in the background on 10% opacity. So people were searching Google and they were like, what's the Sakura site? And I guess that's how they discovered us. Which now that I think about it, that was basically what I was sort of doing on Facebook 20 years later, putting logos on things.
Wow. That's such a, like, even though maybe in like a traditional parent's eyes, they'd prefer you to be a lawyer, a doctor at that point. I think, especially now, if you look at young people and what tech has enabled, that sounds like a dream. Like if I was 18 and I had a website about something I'm super passionate about, it's getting 500,000 hits a month or a day, whatever it was. That's like a dream I wish I was able to accomplish in high school and university. That's like so cool. And I think for younger audiences, that's more impressive than becoming a lawyer or doctor, something like traditional and old school.
Yeah, I think that sort of thing is so normal now.
Yeah.
But back then, we just didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
Because there was no one doing that kind of stuff. And there's nowhere online YouTube didn't even really exist. We couldn't go on YouTube and see a vlogger did this.
Yeah.
YouTube was just full of like tutorial content.
Yeah.
And ads.
Yeah.
So from there, I actually went to study again. I went to Central St Martin's and University of Arts London to study advertising. I figured I know design, advertising makes sense, so let me go and try and learn that. That was my only like way of thinking about it. I had no other. I didn't talk to anyone at university. I didn't even go to visit university beforehand. My parents just wanted me to go back to university because that's the right thing to do. So I went to study there, and I didn't. If I'm honest, I didn't really learn much. Everything was so outdated because by that point, social media blew up, and what they were teaching was so dated about traditional marketing and advertising. I guess what legacy agencies and stuff have done for decades, which interested me, but at the same time I was like, I don't really care about making a 60-second ad that goes on TV or a print ad that goes on a billboard. I want to do something that was all about the internet because that's where I was born, and everything I've done has been about the internet. So did that, and in my second year of university I started a blog called Yin and Yang, and Yin and Yang was essentially, I was obsessed with hypebeast and high snobiety and street culture and streetwear. I've always been into that stuff, I think purely from a hip-hop standpoint. Kanye West, Kid Cudi, Man on the Moon 3, I've been listening to, and
which is great.
Their swag has like inspired me from that age, so I was always into that kind of hype culture, and I wanted a platform of my own to share what I'm interested in. So I made Yin and Yang. Weirdly, one of my friends on MSN gave me that name. I was Yin, and one of my best friends from uni was Yang, and we just posted about things we liked. And back then there was no structure. It was fashion, music, art, girls. I was like, now that we think about it, like the last one was probably not a right thing to do, but it's fine. You grow up.
It's also like it's like your second startup, like mini media brand blog at that point. Like I seen like a trend here. Like that. And I don't know, like if you're still doing not the same thing now, but it seems like you naturally gravitate towards that kind of stuff. Just like setting up your own sort of blog media-ish publication, but it's so like related to what your deep interests are.
Yeah, I actually think it probably comes from a place of being an introvert. I was always a shy, quiet kid, and then online you can sort of express anything you like. MSN and MSN chat, ASL was where I was at. And I guess blogs were the next natural evolution from MSN, and then you have your Instagrams, Snapchats and your TikToks. Actually, MySpace came first. So I set up Yin and Yang, and we just started posting stuff. Pretty much anything around London lifestyle, fashion, music, art, any sneaker drop. And the site started getting traction because we were just two uni students from London doing it. And brands would reach out to us. People reach out to us. People in uni thought we would fly for running our own site. And I was like, those are the guys from Yin and Yang. And it was like, okay, cool. And we started getting invited to these events and stuff, and free drinks. We showed up. We felt like we didn't belong there because we're two students from East London who are fairly broke, getting invited to these like celebrity parties with unlimited alcohol.
It's a dream in uni.
And and the site evolved from just us two, from being like a fairly amateur blog to more of a lifestyle content website, all about London. We started shooting a lot of our own content and brought in a team. We called it the Yin and Yang family, and everyone was around the same age. We're all creatives. We all just liked making stuff. So on the weekends, we'd come up with ideas and shoot them. And
was it all like your friends that you're
well, they're all friends now. They weren't friends. We were actually interviewing people, like we were interviewing people through like email, and then we'd meet up with them for a coffee and understand what they're about, what skill set they would bring and what they're into. And if we thought they had the skill set and also the vibe that they'd fit in with our team, sure. And a lot of people would come and go because they're in university trying to figure out what's next. Yin and Yang was a platform for them to create some work, also have a portfolio, but also just create network. And that's how I ended up in the industry. When I was doing Yin and Yang, I realized I was super passionate about social and creating things with brands. And whenever at university, they'd bring in agencies to give us live briefs. None of us ever cared about that unless you were the teacher's pet. And there's like 2 or 3 dudes who are the teacher's pet. They'd always ask like 5 million questions and put their hands up during the lesson. we'd be the ones that bunk off, do our own content on the side, and try and make our side hustle happen.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and yeah, agencies started spotting us and inviting us to events and giving us products. And I just asked one day, and I think it was in the summer of second year, I was like, did We Are Social, hey, look, I've done this post for you for Vitamin Water. Do you have a intern position? And they were like, let me get back to you. They got back to me and were like, oh, we don't have anything right now. And 2 hours later, they emailed again saying, we actually have something for you. Do you want to come in for an interview? And I came in. At that point, I didn't even know what the industry, like how you dress, none of that. So I came in looking like some Gossip Girl extra, all preppy. And I was actually going through a phase of really liking Gossip Girl. So,
Classic.
Hey,
and
I still have that phase, man.
man, I was Brown Bass. It wasn't Chuck Bass. It was Brown Bass. And we got talking, and weirdly, Gossip Girl came up in conversation, and ended up being an interview about Gossip Girl. And I started the following Monday, and in those 2 months there,
You knew your Gossip Girl, that's why.
Yeah.
in those two months there, I learned more than I ever have in university. Those 3 years of university were cancelled out by 2 months there. Learned so much about the industry. I was a junior account exec, but We Are Social was 35 people in Golden Square, not this like global agency is now. It was scrappy. You get to do a bit of everything. I was doing photography, I was doing design, I was doing social stuff, and talking to clients, and I loved it. I knew straight after that I wanted to work in the digital agency world. So I went back to uni.
It sounds like it was giving you kind of the same amount of freedom as, doing it for yourself was. I was also curious when you're talking about yin and yang, like, was there a point where you said, okay, right, this is starting to become a little bit of a profession now and not just the thing that I love talking about and writing about? And when did you kind of like firm that up and start treating it like that? Or did you continue to be like just in love with it?
Yeah, so the funny thing was like we never did it full time. It was always a side project outside of work.
Yeah.
And I think even when we graduated and went into work, there was always frustrations. I mean, you've worked agency side too. When a client brief doesn't go the way you want it, or like you pitch and then you're on Keynote version 500 and the idea is nowhere what you pitch. Yin Yang for us was an outlet to do whatever we liked without the pressure of clients. Yeah, we
Yeah.
did branded work, but a lot of the time we had the flex and freedom to do whatever we liked. And it was our kind of, I guess, 5 to 9 outside of work, and we always had energy for it. There was a turning point, though. I think later on, I'll get to it, was I knew when my time was up, and I think the whole blogging landscape was changing. And that's when I had to step away, which is a hard decision to make, but I knew things had to change.
Was that later on, or is that so you were working at
Yeah,
VR Social?
so I went to work at Wear Social for 2 months. I went back to uni and then did my final year, but everything in my final year was about social media because of what I learned at Wear Social.
Yeah.
I think my thesis in 2010 was how brands can use influencers as a media outlet. And that was in 2010, which is now it's just like the whole damn industry.
Yeah.
Was influencer even a word at that stage?
It just became a word, and I didn't hate it back then when people used it on describing me, but then afterwards in the industry, I was like, oh, I hate this word.
Yeah. so then,
yeah.
What happened after that?
I got headhunted for an agency called IUHQ, who don't exist anymore. They've evolved since then into a business transformation company and now a Distill Ventures company. I was working in ASOS there. They hit me up through DMs and were like, would you come in for an interview? We've got a place we just want ASOS. I think you'll fit and what you're into make you the great fit. We got it, did it for 2 years. Naturally, I think you both probably can relate. Your growth starts to plateau after 2 years. And I was like, I want to do something a bit more creative. I don't just want to be an account exec. So I didn't look around, but I met someone on Twitter who worked at AKQA. Through someone else I met in New York, he just tweeted both of us saying, hey, look, there's a basketball doc I worked on. They're premiering in London at a Nike event. You both should go check it out. Both of us didn't go, but we followed each other. And Ben was like, let's get a coffee. About 6 months later, went and got a coffee in Clerkenwell, and he said, look, I work at AKQA. We've got the Nike account. I think you'd be a great fit at sportswear. Like, damn. I didn't think I'd ever work on Nike. And I actually said, I'm not interested right now. And then a week later, I was like, you know what? I'm being stupid. Let me just go for it. And I went in for an interview. They offered me social media community manager. I was like, no, that's not me. Community manager is tough. You have to be always on. You've got a real passion for it. And I wanted to do something a bit more creative. So I ended up meeting the ECDs there at AKQA and showed them a portfolio. And finally enough, my portfolio was Yin and Yang. And at that point in Yin and Yang, we just launched version 3. I had just done this post that went viral, which is breaking. I don't know, Ben, if you know Haygate Estate on Elephant Castle.
No, I don't actually know.
So it was this abandoned, like derelict estate. It was built post-war as this utopian, like new type of housing estate. But like all of those buildings, it became quite rough, drug-ridden, and government ended up closing it down. And they used it in a lot of, like, I think a Michael Caine film, loads of London kidulthood and stuff used it. We broke into it, and we had this whole thing of breaking into abandoned buildings. And
That's amazing.
And that post went viral because, like, you're not meant to go into there, like, you could get fined, blah blah blah.
That's called what is that? That's urban exploration, isn't it?
Urban exploration, yeah.
They call it urbex.
Yeah, there's a real, like, weird, nerdy
Cult
community
following
about it. Yeah. So we did that, and then I showed them that post, and the ECD was going nuts, like, oh, this is so dope. And so I got a job there, and I worked at AKQA for 2 years, and actually in the second year of AKQA, I proposed to my now wife. And at that point, I knew Yin and Yang was, like, my passion for Yin and Yang was dying, and it was time for change. So I told the team, I was like, I'm leaving. I'm just going to spend next year getting ready for marriage, but also just trying to do other creative projects outside of work, outside of Yin and Yang. So I emailed Levi's as soon as I left Yin and Yang. I was like, hey, look, I noticed you launched Instagram. It kind of sucks. Can I pitch for it as a freelancer? And my friend there, who I met through a blogging trip that Levi's took us on, she was like, yeah, we've actually got a brief out to agencies, but you're welcome to pitch. So I pitched. They really like the strategy and art direction thing I put together for IG, but they were looking for an agency to take over Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram community management. And I can't do community management, and I wasn't going to leave my day job while I'm trying to save for a wedding. So I said, look, I can't take this on. Pretty much 2 weeks later, I saw this job listed at Instagram on LinkedIn. I was like, creative strategist on Instagram. What? IG has jobs that are non-engineer. They have an office in London. Sorry, I've been chatting for ages. I feel like
No,
and I tweeted again. Twitter has been, like, central to my life for a long time. I tweeted saying, "Do I know anyone on Facebook or Instagram?" As if I was looking for a contact for a Nike campaign.
Yeah.
And my friend Ray, who actually introduced me to Ben at AKQA, tweeted his friend in San Francisco and was like, "Yo, Bazard, you should meet Niran. He's got a few questions." And we connected on email, and I asked 3 questions. What's the culture like? Am I going to grow? And is there creative freedom? And he answered the first 2. His role wasn't necessarily creative at Facebook. And then someone else in London, Tori, who you might know, Anthony, Tori Nicholson.
Yes, I do, yeah.
She got connected to me. She called me up that afternoon. Like, she spared that much time. She called me up and answered this question. She introduced me to Alistair Cottrell, who you also might know, who was the hiring manager. Me and Al then do a VC like 2 weeks later on Skype. I was in the office at AKQA hiding in a corner whispering. And he's like, "Why are you whispering?" I was like, "I'm at work, trying to lay low, can't get a meeting room." And I think he saw a little bit of himself, younger self in me, and he's put me through as a referral and to an interview process. So I had 8 interviews, then I got the job at IG just before I got married.
And
you actually got a role from breaking into buildings. I'm still kind of pondering on that one. It's amazing.
But even the IG one, I had 8 interviews, and every time I would show, like, the Levi's work that I would pitch to Levi's, and they'd be like, "This is what we do here."
That's amazing. And at that point, also with the wedding and stuff, like, I know one of the big transitions that in your life was becoming a dad. Was that right after this? Was that a few years later? What was
a few years later. It was 2018. I got married in 2015. Yeah. All through. That's why when I left Instagram, I said, I genuinely feel like I grew up at this company.
Yeah.
Because I came in as quite a shy, introverted 24-year-old,
Yeah.
and I leave at 32.
Yeah.
Bought a house, got married, had a kid in that time. So it's been a wild journey, and becoming a dad was interesting. Like, changes everything. Getting married is one thing, and we weirdly did it the old-fashioned way, where our parents are super conservative, so we're living together before marriage isn't going to happen. I'm Indian. My parents expected me to have an arranged marriage. So I told them at 15, I was like, I ain't having an arranged marriage. And when I finally did that, and I told them at 24 that I've got a girlfriend of 3 years who's not Indian, it was like a Bollywood scene.
What was their reaction? What did they say?
My mom was like, I guess it's a very typical Indian ethnic minority household where the dad is the breadwinner, the dominant voice in the house. So she was upset. She was scared of what my dad would think. My dad was outraged. She was like, you're breaking our traditions and value and culture. Like, you need to stay within our culture. I was like, Dad, look, you're raising me in one of the most diverse cities in the world. And you expect me to marry an Indian girl from the same caste and the same part of India? That ain't gonna happen. My wife's Filipino. She's British born. Got a beautiful mixed race daughter. And my counter to my dad was, look, I'm Indian, but I'm also British, and our kids are going to be British, Indian, and Filipino. That's 3 cultures. That's more rich than staying in one.
Yeah.
I'm so intrigued because I always think that creativity seems to flourish under restraint. And it seems like, throughout growing up, there was all these kind of traditional restraints that were put on you. Do you think that helped you grow as someone who really wanted to have creative expression through the different mediums you've been pursuing?
I think so. I think it gave me a lot of freedom and joy. Like, even looking back at playing with Lego, I was just a quiet kid who played with Lego and come up with loads of random stuff. And then gaming was actually, I put that in my description. Gaming was always my escape. And I still religiously play games when I have time. It's a lot harder when you have a kid. But I play a lot of role-playing games because of the storytelling methodology, and I'm learning, just immersing myself in a different world for a bit.
I love that, man. And so did you get to continue that kind of creative expression while you were at Instagram during that time as well?
Yeah, I was in a team called Creative Shop. We basically help brands with their strategy on platform. So anything to do with Instagram and Facebook execution. And it was fun. Like, it was wild, wild west early on because IG advertising didn't exist. So we could pretty much walk in anywhere and say, hey, we want to help you. And they'd be like, sure, we want to do something on Instagram because it's a shiny new platform.
Yeah, that was a really great time because obviously, I was working there at the same time. And it's interesting how, and I'm sure it's probably influenced part of the reason why you left Instagram, Facebook, but those years, like 2014 to 16, it really was the Wild West. I remember my team too, like when I was there, my team was like 10 people when I got there. And then when I left in 2018, it was like 80. But the amount of change and the amount of things that you could do back if you're working at Facebook/Instagram London in 2014 is insane. And it's so different now, for sure.
Yeah, I've done some insane stuff that I would have never imagined myself doing, like shooting a TV show with Tan France for Facebook. Like, I think actually I went to Paris, like southern France, to do a talk in a castle. David Ogilvy's castle for Ford.
Wow. I think I remember this actually.
Yeah, I don't know if you were there, but it was just like so random. So many weird random experiences that you'd just be told to do, but you'd learn so much from them.
Yeah.
And meet some really interesting people.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt like I was similarly way underqualified, but just told to do things. And I just said yes, because I just had to. But
yeah, like doing talks. I would never do talks. I hate client calls, let alone doing a talk in front of 200 people. Yeah. I remember my first one, I swerved it. I was like, I'm not ready yet. I don't know the narrative. And then 3 months later, I had to do one at Mindshare, this agency in London. And I partnered up with someone else who's a lot more older, and he was very, very good at that stuff. I was sweating like Eminem in 8th Mile, like knees weak, palms.
About to throw up mom's spaghetti, right? Like,
besides that part, but I look back at it, I was like, I was awful. but that's part of the more you put yourself out there, you learn to tell your story, and you pick up new skills, and you also meet loads of interesting people through that.
That sounds amazing. Now, but before we get into like, I guess your next transition about why you left Facebook, Instagram, what you're doing now, should we talk about like what impact has becoming a dad had on your life? Because that happened before you left Instagram, Facebook. Is that right? Was that how old's your daughter?
She's now 2.5.
Okay.
And yeah, it was in 2018. We found out in 2017, and the Facebook 15 thing happened to me, where I was really into fitness and taking care of myself and making sure I was in shape and just doing some kind of me time. But then when you join a big company like this, you have to travel so much. Yeah. And I think I went through so much transition in my personal life, from not living together, moving in together, losing my sleep routine. I used to get up at 4:30, go to the gym before work. All of that went out the window when you're sharing a house with someone. Yeah. And all the work travel meant I just ate. Yeah. Those club sandwiches in hotels when you land at 11 p.m. It all added up. And when I found out my wife was pregnant with Naraya, so I need to get into shape, and not just for a narcissistic sense. It was more, I want to be the best version of myself for my daughter, but also if I want her to look after herself, be healthy and into fitness.
Set an example.
I got to set an example. I can't be the dad that's out of shape being like, yo, you need to do burpees. Yeah. So I ended up, I think it was January 2018. I was like, you know what? I'm going teetotal. I'm going to get this right. Going to go teetotal and not drink while my wife can't drink either. And signed up for F45, which opened up down the road from Facebook. Never done it before. Died pretty much in the first one, but I liked that they learned my name, and there was a sense of community there, and I just kept going back. And within 3 months, I lost 15 kg and got into shape. My goal was to get rid of my man boobs and dad bod before dad life.
Did you succeed?
I succeeded.
Nice.
And I won the challenge that they had going on, like who can lose the most weight and get into the best shape in the 8 weeks. But for me, it was more about the me time. It was carving out that space for my well-being in the morning. Also getting bullied and tortured by the trainers. Yeah. Like, there was one trainer in particular, she would say, whenever she sees me slacking, she'd be like, your wife is pushing out a baby and you're here crying over her pushing for a burpee. Every time I just clench fists, like, you know what, I'm going for it.
Such good motivation. So Ben and I are not fathers, but
we were talking about this before. We're like, we have no idea what the hell we would do if we had to have a child right now.
I think you just adapt. So I don't think there's a right time to have a kid. I think everyone has this fairy tale notion of like, oh, we're gonna have a house, gonna have a 6-figure salary, gonna have this amount of money saved up. You just adapt when you have a kid. Yeah. Like, I think about my immigrant parents. Like, they didn't have much when they had me, and they made it work. I think the biggest change was you realize it's not about yourself anymore. Yeah, I was like, you're married and you have another half, but it's totally different when you have a kid. It's just some physiological change that happens. And I think for dads, you don't realize till you're in that room and your wife's giving birth and they hand you the baby. And that's when I realized I was a dad. Like, as much as I can feel the kicks in my wife's belly, it's not the same for men till you experience. And they gave me the baby and I was like, oh crap, this is my life now.
Wow. That sounds like I'm getting chills.
No idea what I would do if I was handed a baby like that.
I was literally like, I just started rocking, and then I was like, "Mom," to my wife's mom, I was like, "Can you hold her?"
What was because when people think about having a child, the impact it has in your life, there are these, the cliches about the way it changes you. But what's something that came to you as a complete surprise about why it was such a big deal for you?
I've always wanted to be a dad before I was 30, and I managed to do that. I think the biggest thing was my parents would always say, you won't know till you have a kid of your own And I think within the first 2 weeks, I must have called my mom, like, not crying, but like pretty much like, you were so right. I'm so sorry for being a douchebag. Um, so being a dad, I think the harder part is you are rejected by your kid early on because they just want the mom, and biologically they know the mom's smell because they're inside for ages and they want the mom's milk. Like if you drop a baby, a newborn, on mom's belly, it'll climb to the nipples naturally because that it knows that's where the life source is and where it gets nutrients from. So they have that connection, whereas with a dad, they don't have that, and we naturally can't calm them down the same way early on because they just want to be breastfed. Um, if 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 the mom is breastfeeding.
Yeah.
So I had that rejection feeling early on. I was like, she doesn't want me. I was like, this is hard. Like I'm trying my best to just throw love onto her, but she just calms down when my wife is breastfeeding. I try and give the bottle, she won't have it. I remember the first time, I think it was like a month and a half in, my wife went out for her birthday. I booked like a massage, getting nails did. So it meant I had half a day of just daycare, daddy daycare, and I was like, I was broken by the end of it. Have you both watched Creed 2?
Creed 2?
Wait,
Yeah, Rocky.
Oh, Creed 2. Sorry, yeah.
Creed, yeah,
Michael B.
yeah.
Jordan, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a scene in it when his wife goes to the studio and he ends up like not being able to calm down the crying baby, and he has to go to the gym to box. Then the baby calms down.
Yeah.
That was so real, and it could only be written by a dad, and that's how I felt. I tried everything. I even put on my wife's bra.
Wow.
And
Wow.
held the bottle because I thought the scent could help, and it did help.
Wow. Does it get easier, or does it? I mean, it's been
changes. Yeah, it got so much easier once they come out of that phase and they have more of a bond to you. She's pretty much, I'd say, I know, I think my wife would say this is not true, but I'd say she's a bit of a daddy's girl. Yeah, that was the main change. Like you understand what your parents must feel like. As soon as that happened, I was like, this is what my parents feel like when I slammed the door shut and locked my bedroom when I was a kid, or when I fall out with them at this age and I don't want to talk to them.
Yeah.
That's how they feel.
You know, when you said kind of she started to be a bit of a daddy's girl, was that a slow transition? Was there a moment when you're like, okay, right, now we've got a real connection here?
Yeah, I think we took the 4 months paternity leave. I split it 2 and 2. The second 2 months, we went to Asia, Philippines for a month, and then Singapore for a bit. And in that time, it was just me being there. And I was actually carrying her in the carrier for most of that 2 months. And she just developed a closer bond with me because I was there all the time instead of being at work. And I guess being present is key. And that's actually a bigger shift that happened was I didn't want to be in the office. Like going back to work after paternity leave was hard. And I pretty much changed the way I work to be in the office early and leave early so I can be home to be a present dad. And it blows my mind a lot because I think, especially coming from an agency culture, you never see people leave early, especially the parents. I was like, what? Yeah. I could not imagine not being here for like a dinner time or picking her up from nursery or even putting her to sleep. Like those are essential parts. And I think fatherhood's changed for our generation where we are so active at home and it's 50-50 split in the house. It's not the wife does everything and the dad just comes home and plays with the kid for 20 minutes. It is 50-50 split. And I've heard comments from my people in my family like, oh, you change nappies. I'm like, of course I change nappies. Did you not change nappies? And that's people from my parents' generation, some of the men didn't change nappies.
Was that part of what encouraged you to create Deft then? Was that some of like the inspiration between kind of getting on your own time, being able to work flexibly how you want?
A bit of it.
Would love to know a little bit more about Deft as well.
Yeah, so I guess moving to the final transition was being at Face for 5 years. I think it's a very hard company to leave. Anthony, I don't know if you agree there. Like they give you every perk under the sun and you're really well paid. Though I'd say when you come to a company that grows so big, there's so many other frustrations and you're almost always connected to work, even though you have the freedom to disconnect. I just found myself not learning anything anymore.
Mhm.
And I wasn't as excited about my job the way I was in 2016, 17, 18, where I was learning new things all the time. After a while, it just felt like another campaign.
Yeah.
And with Deft, the opportunity was to step out and help people within the direct-to-consumer world, especially founder-led startups and scale-ups. Think the next set of Gymsharks of this world, helping them unlock scale through creativity and media, and that's what we do. And that was an interesting proposition, and it was hard, really tough decision to make in the middle of a pandemic and a recession to step out.
Yeah.
But I knew it. I would regret it if I didn't do it.
What,
And also, sorry, go ahead.
and so I was just going to ask, what was the like? Is this something you've been thinking about for a long time? Because I know you started it with Ian, another one of our ex-colleagues and stuff. Like, had you guys been talking about this for a while? Was it like a lightning bolt of inspiration in February of this year? Like, how did it all come about?
No, like he left and started it, and pretty much in stealth mode in May. And I think he would probably say the same, that he wanted to do something new and learn new things. And I, at the start of this year, didn't even foresee that I would be leaving Facebook, especially in the middle of a recession and a pandemic.
Yeah.
Like, that's madness.
Yeah.
Like, explaining that to my wife, that I was going to leave to become a founder and start something new in the middle of a recession, was a tough one, but she understood. Like, again, creatively, I was a bit frustrated and I wanted to learn new things.
Yeah.
And now 2 months in, I don't regret it one bit. I've learned so much more in 2 months than I probably would have staying there. And also, one of my friends, she said to me, like, what's the worst that can truly happen is A, you go and do this thing and it fails, but you've learned so much more about yourself and gain new skills and network, and you can always go back into a corporate job.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good point. I never thought of it that way. Because my real plan was actually to move to Singapore next year.
Oh.
But with a pandemic and very little family time for my daughter, she's not really seen her grandparents as much this year. It sort of feels unfair to move halfway across the world when parents are getting older. There's this disease killing people.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel right to be locked up in a country away from family.
And what's the vision then for Deft in, like, let's say the next? I don't know if you have like a predetermined strategy for the next few years, or is it still open-ended, figuring that stuff out? Because I know it's only been a couple of months, but how is this sort of transition time that we're all going through, like, made you think about what the future might hold?
I think the e-commerce space has been super interesting for us because e-commerce has boomed so much this year.
Yeah.
It was naturally happening, but COVID has accelerated by 6 years, I think.
Yeah.
We saw what happened with Topshop recently. They're going bankrupt.
Yeah.
But it's all things that were happening slowly in the background. If you look at Google search trends, Topshop was dying for the last 5-6 years.
Yeah.
The likes of Boohoo, ASOS, Pretty Little Thing, they just understand culture better, and they're marrying culture and commerce. And that's where we want to play, this intersection of culture and commerce, and looking at what trends are happening next, especially around live commerce and where we can potentially build product to improve creative on e-commerce platforms and Facebook, Instagram. The long-term goal, I think we're still defining that. Things change a lot. We're still quite early in our journey.
And I know another thing that you've done recently, and we could talk about for just a little bit, is you've released a book recently. Is that right?
Yeah, I keep forgetting that happened.
Could you tell us about that? Like would that happen? I forget the details, but that happened this year. And like, what's the story behind that? What's it about? How did you came about it?
Yeah, so it happened in January. I got an email from an old contact of mine that I met while I was doing Yin and Yang. She was actually writing for another website back then, and we happened to be at this Adidas football event in London, and we were both covering it for our respective sites. And there was a guy called Levi Maestro who's well known in the streetwear scene. He would do a lot of vlogs early on. He did like the first vlog from the Nike campus. He skated in Yeezys, the first Yeezys, and everyone was like, this dude is crazy, he's skating in Yeezys. and he was doing a London meetup. So we both were there, met up with him, met each other. Lamara, 10 years later, is now the commissioning editor for Merky. Merky is Stormzy's imprint with Penguin. The reason Merky exists is Penguin reached out to Stormzy when he was 24, asking if we'd do a biography. He was like, I'm 24. It makes no sense. He asked for an imprint label. So that's Merky, because he wanted to celebrate and hero underrepresented voices to become authors for those audiences. So when she told me that they're doing a how-to series and they wanted to do one on building brands, she reached out to me because she saw my career path and what I've done in the past. And I was like, this sounds dope, but I'm not a writer. The only thing I've really written is blog posts. And I would never say writing is my strength, but I just enjoyed sharing my voice and opinion. So I said to her, look, I'll do it, but I want to do it with a friend, because for me, projects are always way better when you can collaborate with a friend, like you guys are doing. So I hit up Damola, who was a strategy director at BBH at that point. And I texted him, and I think it was in January. I was like, yo, dude, you got time for a 5-minute call today? He's like, yeah, it's about a project with Merky. And that's all I said. And then I called him and he was like, I'm down. And I guess for a lot of my career, as you've heard, side projects have played a huge part in it. The hard thing for me, I don't know, Anthony, if you can relate to this, was when you're at a company like Facebook, you don't really have time for side projects because you're multi-regions, you're in different time zone, you're traveling a lot. And at the end of the day, you just want to switch off because work is intense. And when this came up, I was like, yo, I haven't had a side project. I want to do this. It sounds like a fun thing that I've not done before, and it's a challenge. So in February, we met up with Lamara, did a little plan, did another video call before when things completely changed and the world went into lockdown. And we started writing the book on March 6th. It's called How to Build It, around building brands. From a business perspective, I also talk about personal brand and networking, which I think is also vital. So I started writing on March 6th and finished writing March, I think like 31st.
That's
we had to
quick.
hand in the we had to hand in the first.
It's about a 2-week turnaround.
Yeah, it's a small book. They tried to make it mini books, around 10,000 words, but still 10,000 words in my head is like, that's a thesis. So we did that, and then he goes into edit rounds, and edit rounds is really like going back to school, a teacher getting a red pen and going like crossing out. And it was painful, and it's all done on Word. I haven't used Microsoft Word in like God knows how long. I felt like I was back in secondary school. And it was an interesting process. I learned a lot. It was tough because we were doing it outside of our day jobs. So he actually quit BBH at the end of February, a month off, and then he joined Facebook on my team, or my wider team, as a creative strategist. And so the lucky thing for us was the pandemic happened and work sort of slowed down in March. Like everyone was still trying to figure out how we work. So I had so much more flexibility during the day and working from home. I got to write the book. Otherwise, I don't think I would have met the deadline. So the book came out in October, and it was wild. Like, even saying I'm an author now, I can't believe that I'm an author that has books in Waterstones and Amazon and all these other shops. The bummer is we haven't been able to do like events and stuff because of COVID. Couldn't do a launch party with Stormzy. That has to wait till 2021.
But I mean, surely get a virtual one with him going, right?
Hopefully in 2020. I'd rather do it in person. Hopefully it's mansion or something.
we're all invited, right? Because that sounds like pretty amazing. And so where do people find that? Just how to build it?
It's on, I'd say Waterstones, any local bookshop. It's also on Jeff Bezos' website, amazon.co.uk.
Okay.
But let's try and support the local
Jeff
business.
Bezos endorsed. That's incredible.
Let's support the local business.
Awesome.
That's really awesome. How did you find the process of writing that? I mean, you said it was obviously you had some time, but co-authoring with someone, or like what was that like, and how did you kind of agree on which ideas you guys thought were important together?
So we actually mapped it out in February. We met up a few times after work and just started doing like loads of bullet points of things that we think could go into the book. And then over time, calling Lamara and emailing us structures, we'd like narrow it down to X amount of bullet points per chapter. And then we just split the sections of each chapter up to who takes what.
Yeah.
And that's just how it worked. And I guess we spent a lot of time on video calls and audio calls during that process, just reviewing each other's chapters and seeing if the flow worked. And naturally things will change and evolve. And then rewrites or moving chunks of the book around because after we written, like, oh no, this flow doesn't work.
I love that. I mean, it's going to play, you're talking about personal brand, but you're also building it by doing that. So you'd hope that, as a result of this, if you're doing the agency at Deft, agency/consultancy, you guys are going to be getting hit up straight from the book.
I hope so. I think it's definitely helped. I probably should promote it a bit more than I do because it just feels weird to promote something. So like, I don't know. I'm not one of those influencer type people that are like, hey guys, have you read my book today?
Yeah. Well, I hope after the hundreds of millions of listeners of our podcast like hear about this, then maybe you'll get a few 100 million sales, the bump from the What Next podcast. So if people want to find you, where else should they find you, Niran? Like Instagram, Twitter? It sounds like all those platforms played a big role in your professional career as well. So
I definitely say Instagram is probably my first platform. Okay. Instagram.com/Niran, Twitter. .com/Niran Vinod. Unfortunately, I don't have my first name on there. I had it all like in sync before, but then after 3 years at IG, I basically put in a request to get my first name.
Yeah.
And the global head of policy had to approve it, and I got it.
Nice.
I made the lamest excuse. Sorry if you're listening to this. It's basically said my name is way too complicated.
Yeah.
When I'm speaking on stage, so can I get just my first name? Because so then people can follow me and clients can reach out to me.
Business case.
Worked.
Yeah.
It worked.
That's amazing. Do you have any final words or things you want to share in terms of the audience, like, I don't know, life advice or final reflections as we close out? Thank you for.
I have a motto that I've shared quite a bit, especially when it comes to career, but I think it also applies to personal life. If you don't ask, you don't get. A lot of my career has been on reaching out to random people, sometimes cold emailing or cold LinkedIn messages or Twitter DMs. And a lot of the time, it builds up your resiliency to rejection because a lot of time people don't reply. But if that one person does reply, it could change your life. And for me, that happened in several instances, from people that I interviewed for my thesis to getting that internship at We Are Social. And also sort of, I met my wife in person at UAL, but we only started talking because of Twitter.
Really?
And
nice.
Again, it was a Gossip Girl thing. She tweeted XOXO. And I was like, wait, is that from Gossip Girl, ? And that just got us tweeting and talking to each other.
That's so good. Well, we've recently cold emailed Ryan Reynolds trying to get him on the podcast. Yeah. So we're fingers crossed on that one. Man.
Has he replied?
We got him out of office.
He's got a connection.
You never know.
Well, we're gonna, like, cold emailing is a big part of our strategy now. So like Ryan Reynolds is there. I also cold emailed Virgil Abloh the other day. So let's just see how these things go. But
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Arnold Schwarzenegger. We actually
me and him share the same birthday.
Oh really? Well,
we'll use that in our follow-up.
You might enjoy another episode that we did with this guy, Connor Blakely, who's like a very young Gen Z consultant, and he basically said he built a network by just sending hundreds of cold emails a day for like 3 years straight, and now he's like consulted with like the CEO of Sprint, lots of different companies, and it's just hearing you talk about it as well. To me, it feels like one of the most underrated marketing, outreach, business development, personal development things to do in the world. It's just reaching out cold. I feel like, at least for me, I was always discouraged from doing that because people are always telling me like, oh, don't do that. I should do like warm intro.
People are busy.
Exactly.
And I actually found this Tim Ferriss thing on his blog from years ago, and he says on how to sign off on emails.
Yeah. And
he just says, look, I totally understand if you're busy. It's completely okay if you don't have time to reply. And so ending on that kind of note, very sincere, you generally always get a reply.
Yeah. That's amazing.
You're basically saying you're hands off. You're not asking too much, but you're
Yeah.
you're kind of asking for a lot.
Yeah, and even if it's just 15 minutes audio call, that's all you want.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Well, Niran, thanks so much for taking the time, man. Really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.